finish a concrete slab in this space with boulders and that's only 4 to 5 feet tall, 3 to 4 feet tall, right?
Be a great opportunity to rent a stand mixer and take it down in your basement and then hump 80-pound bags of concrete down.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Operations Manager for TDS Custom Construction, Ian Schwant.
Morning, Patrick.
Senior Editor for Green Building Advisor, Kiley Jacques.
Hello, all.
And Producer, Jeff Rose.
Hi.
Please email your questions to FHB Podcast at taunton.com. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Well, it is a pleasure to see you all this morning. How are you?
Well, how are you, Patrick?
Nice to see Kiley. I haven't been on with her in a while.
I know, I missed you guys.
It's been a while.
I always enjoy chatting with you.
What have you been up to, Kiley, in your absence?
Well, I actually thought I would use this moment to share some news, some good green building news, which doesn't happen all that often.
Goodness, we need some of that.
Right? So Chris Magwood, who's the director of the Endeavour Centre in Ontario, Canada, and that is a building skills educational program. He and a number of other building professionals, including Jacob Diva Rakusin of New Frameworks, who some folks might know, have been developing for the last, I want to say 3 years. It's been a number of years. What's called a beam calculator. It's an estimating tool, digital, for determining the upfront carbon emissions associated with any given building project, but it's tailored for residential use. So there are other carbon counting tools out there, but that are not as friendly for residential builders and designers and consultants and developers. And so it's exciting news. They've been fine-tuning it for so long that it's a really robust tool with a lot of offerings. I just wrote up a quick post about it just to announce its launch, which was on Tuesday, or May 3rd. So it's brand new. And, you know, to just read a little bit about it, you can check out that post. And I think it's about to get a lot of coverage. I think it could be a game changer for residential designers and builders, just in terms of its functionalities are robust. You can really spend time making climate smart decisions if that's your prerogative in terms of the materials that you select. So I want to tout it. I haven't looked at it. Chris and Jacob are going to be doing a BS and Beer show on June 2nd to talk about how to use it. They also offer a training course on their site, which I should mention that the group that put this together is called the Builders for Climate Action. That's their whole mission. So, you know, they have been working tirelessly on this, and it's just a real feather in their cap and such a wonderful tool to have available. I just want to give it a good plug and have people go look at it. Beam Carbon Estimator. You can Google it. It'll land you at the Builders for Climate Action site or Green Building Advisor and probably a number of other places.
Cool. So I'm curious how it works, but we'll have to wait for the BS and Beer demo, or go to the website.
The training course is actually pretty. It's 3 sessions, each of which are an hour and a half long, which gives you some sense of, you know.
Let's call it comprehensive.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Mm-hmm.
What do you think about this, Ian?
Yeah, would you ever use it, Ian? Something like that?
I've talked to Jacob about it when he was in development for it. I was in the Plan Big group with him, and we actually visited New Frameworks, and it was interesting to hear all the work that he and Chris Magwood were putting into it. And I think during that site visit, we did kind of some of the rough calculations for various projects. And I had done some work to our house that we had in Millbrook, and I actually used their calculations to see what the carbon savings was in the renovation that we did. I don't remember any of the data, but it was rather complex what we had to do.
So, so you used an early version of this, Ian? Is
No,
that
we
fair?
used kind of some of the math behind it.
Uh-huh.
I think he had put together some sort of a spreadsheet that had a few of the formulas in it that we were able to use. And it was mostly centered around changing your HVAC system.
When did you do that?
That had to have been in like maybe 18 or 19.
I have a sneaking suspicion that it's a lot more user-friendly at this point. I think that was half the battle, was trying to make it something that somebody can look at their phone and figure out quickly.
So impossibly complicated, right?
The whole point was to make it user-friendly and not impossibly complicated. So just be aware that I think it's probably changed a lot since you were looking at it. Not the math, of course, but how the interface for somebody who doesn't understand the math.
Is to make this impossibly complicated calculation easy to figure out.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, if I remember right, we had a few different PDFs that had some of the values on it that they had figured out, and then we had to plug it into a spreadsheet along
Those were
with
probably
the data on the project.
you were probably working off of like environmental declaration product data, right?
That sounds familiar, yeah.
What?
EPDs. That's what's so cumbersome. And they
What
have
is that?
probably environmental declaration product labels tell you what's in the product. It's like a nutrition label for building products. And those are what are used to generate these carbon counting calculators. But nobody can read, I shouldn't say nobody, the average building professional is not going to spend time looking at EPDs. So taking all of that data and putting it into a program that is like, okay, I want to use EPS, 2 inches of EPS foam. What is that going to cost carbon-wise, right? So something really basic seeming, but it has all that back data that you don't need to mess with. It just shows you what you want to know, you know?
Ian, have you gone any further with your outbuilding or your screen porch?
So I had a nice conversation this morning with one of the reps from Screenies, Bill Mauch, who's out of Kansas City. He was the one that had reached out to you, Patrick, that I think you forwarded to me.
Yeah, he I don't know, someone made him listen to the show and he liked it.
He said his brother-in-law did it. He actually said we were the first podcast he had ever listened to.
Oh, wow.
Which he's got to be like the last person other than my mother who's maybe never listened to a podcast on purpose.
On purpose.
No, it was a fun conversation. He had asked me how I'd heard about the product and where I'd used it before, and told me about some of the things that they're working on in the future. So it's always nice to talk to product reps who can help you maybe do it a little better or more efficiently.
Because they probably know more about it than we do, right? Yeah,
definitely. The one interesting thing that he did tell me was he quizzed me on my screen selection. And he said that I'd chosen a fiberglass screen, which was kind of middle of the road for me based on strength from the amount of wind that we have here, and then also keeping the view intact. But it's a fiberglass product, and he had mentioned in Kansas City where he is, they can't use fiberglass products. They have to use a PVC one because the grasshoppers there will eat the screen.
Oh, wow. I've never heard of that.
He found out that they do that because in the manufacturing process for the fiberglass screens, they use a soy-based binder, which apparently the grasshoppers love.
Interesting.
So,
that just sounds awful for so many reasons.
Yeah.
Something you'd never think about, right?
Yeah, so I had to bring that up. I thought that was pretty interesting that Bill had that information, but I will be back at the Screen Porch Project this weekend because we have like 100+ people coming over to our house in a month for our housewarming party, and I'm going to need that extra 450 square feet.
Oh,
You're going to be like stacking people like cordwood.
Yeah, the garage, the house, outside. Yeah.
Jeff, you working on anything lately?
No, just outside, spreading mulch and moving dirt.
the best stuff.
Yeah, we got a lot of that going on around here. Blessedly, I'm uninvolved. I wanted to share a little fun thing I saw on GBA, Kiley, with our audience. This was a post that Allison Bales, I believe, reminded us of.
Yeah.
it's a piece on the benefit of overhangs, and I'll put a link on the podcast page. But what I loved about this whole thing was a comment made by Charlie Sullivan, who's a regular contributor to GBA, or commenter, you might say. He says, maybe we should stop calling them overhangs, since the word over implies excess. Here's my proposal for new terminology. Greater than 18 inches, sufficient hang. 10 to 18 inches, almost sufficient hang. 4 to 10 inches, deficient hang, and less than 4 inches, mistake.
Mistake hang. I love it. Good old Charlie.
But so Allison was reminding us that research has indicated that the best thing you can do to make a building resilient with regard to water is to put overhangs on it. And the bigger the better by all accounts.
Patrick, would you agree? I've started to notice more regularly now, since you made mention of this comment, that most overhangs on houses around here anyway typically are on the eaves, and then there's no overhangs or very short overhangs, shallow, on the gable ends. Do you find that to be true? Why not all the way
generally
around?
speaking, I would say more often than not, they're omitted from gables or made narrower than they are at the
What do you
eaves.
think is the thinking there? Why omit them from the gables or make them shallower? Why?
These are
there's no
very good
reason?
questions, Kylie. I don't know.
Why have
'Cause,
a
you know,
mistake overhang?
My guess is because they're applied, whereas the eave overhang
Are
becomes part
naturally-
of your roof system.
That's a good guess.
Either by being your rafter tail or a truss tail, whereas on the gable end, that's almost
work.
always going to be applied. And it's much easier to just apply a 1 foot deep overhang to that gable end.
That's a
I think
really
that
good
is a
point.
very good explanation.
Yes, I do
I
too.
was
I
going to
bet you're
go
right.
back to history and say, because, you know, like the original Cape Cod architecture had minimal overhangs, and we're being referential to this great period in American architecture.
That could be too.
I don't think that's true at all.
No,
more
I would buy
intelligent.
that.
I don't think it's true. I think it's because it's easier to make a
Construction
narrower overhang, as Ian suggests. Do you have any thoughts on why people omit gable end overhangs, Jeff?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely the engineering, because for a deep overhang, you've got to build a whole
Make
lot
it
of
attached.
extra structure.
Right.
Yeah. As always, we got some great feedback from our listeners. Coincidentally, Andrew wrote in, might not be worth a deep discussion, but thought it might be interesting context to mention the next time Embodied Carbon comes up. So he sent a link to Green is the New Black, and it's a piece about how BP invented the term carbon footprint as part of a public relations campaign to make us
Feel guilty.
feel better about using fossil fuels, because they're like, it's just a small part of your life. Everything else is really adding up to much worse things you do.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's. This is such a neat site to dive into. I actually spent probably about I hate to admit
Don't
this,
say it
but
on the air because you get a pay cut.
a very long time on this site this morning. So I'm happy to know about this, Andrew. There's some really interesting content there that they make a lot of different ties. But
Ian, did you look at this?
it's a lengthy article.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, it was a pretty long read.
What'd you think? Were you surprised this BP made this all up?
I think I'd heard that before. Probably from Dan Colber would be my guess. It seems like something that he would be telling people.
Sure.
You know, I have to pick. I'm not sure. There's a bit of a premise there that suggests that we are not individually responsible for climate action.
I don't think it's a bit of a premise. I think that's the entire premise.
Well, I got to the very end, and they backpedal a little bit. The article's somewhat all over the place, but at the same time, it's a nuanced point. But there is a really interesting book out there right now by Lloyd Alter, who's the design editor at Tree Hugger, and he's a very, very smart man. And he did some extensive research into what's called the 1.5 degree lifestyle. I won't get into it all, but if you're interested in learning, the subtitle of which is why individual climate action matters more than ever. I haven't gotten through the entire book, but it's fascinating. it's quite a commitment to try to eliminate or even just plain minimize your individual carbon footprint.
Does it mean I have to give up Amazon packaging? That
I know,
would make me so sad.
Right? Yes, that's a good point.
I'm thinking sometimes it's easier to take BP's perspective and be like, you know
It's
what?
not
It's
my
a
problem.
bigger problem than I can solve.
All right. Well, that's a good read.
It was very interesting. I knew nothing about this.
Yeah.
We heard from Dack again, our friend. Hello, podcast crew. I don't have any insight into job site tunes, but its discussion got me thinking about the pod's bumper music. It's like a Leonard Skinner ballad that's more appropriate for This Old House 70s Rants edition. Meanwhile, you're discussing PV, thermal envelopes, ground source heat pumps, net zero, and the theory of constraints. How about something a little more bumping? Not calling for straight up EDM here, but electronic and no guitar. That would echo the modern context of the pod and appeal to the iGen, YGen, Z Reddit audience. He says, while it will take some time to come to grips with Patrick and Andrew's love of fish,
Right?
still love the show. Dack.
Thank you, Dack.
What do you think about this, Jeff?
I really don't want to comment because I did not choose the music.
Yeah, who chose it?
It was Patrick and Rob Yeager.
Don't blame me.
Not Patrick. I'm sorry. Sorry, no, I'm Colin and Rob Yeager.
I like it.
You like it, Kiley?
I do. I like our intro music.
I think it's just become the music for the brand. You can't change it.
you
can't
can't.
Change the Happy Days theme. You can't
Right.
change, Seinfeld, right?
Right.
Not that we're even close to Happy Days in quality.
Yeah, I get a
for
little
music
happy feeling when I
librarian.
hear it. I bet a lot
You
of people
do.
do.
Yeah. I feel like I should be somewhere when I hear it. Starting. This comes from Alex. Patrick, don't know if you've seen the electric Ryobi zero-turn mower. So Alex is obviously making reference to my recent purchase of a Makita cordless lawnmower. So I followed the link to this thing, and it is an amazing 54-inch wide electric riding mower with 2 individual motors for the blades and a different motor for the drivetrain, and it is an amazingly beautiful machine. And it's also like $5,000.
I gotta say, I'm super happy with my Ryobi electric mower. I mean, it's not nearly what that thing entails, but the blades on it have remained super sharp for 3 seasons now.
So that's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It's a bonus.
I had Liam out with the Makita. This is the first time my 16-year-old son has ever mown the lawn in his life because he's a little spacey for trusting him on the tractor, and we have a stream as part of the property, So I was never very comfortable letting him try that out, but he did a great job with the push mower, and got to think it's good for one's health to be pushing a mower around when you're a teenager.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Better than me.
Yeah, especially when you're not breathing in the exhaust.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, do you guys know about No Mo May? This is new to me. I'm going to try it. It's already driving me bonkers, and only the 7th. The whole idea
No,
is,
I don't know what this is.
The whole idea is to not mow your lawn for the month of May to give pollinators an opportunity to get established, and so it's all for the the health of your environment. And I'm trying to get my neighbors to do it. We'll see. I dropped some hints. We'll see if they do it. I'm trying to do it. It gets weedy and messy looking, and it's hard to.
You're going to get your lawn mowed whether you want it or not. Is my guess.
It's hard to break your expectation that you have a nice, neat, tidy green. I mean, I don't have lawn; I have weeds, but I like my weeds to be short and unassuming. But at this point, I'm going to have a wildflower meadow soon. So, but that's the idea.
You just got to go with it.
That's
Yeah,
the
you
whole
got to go
idea.
with it.
You got to go with it, right?
I would like to do no mow ever. That would be what I would like
There
to
are
do.
solutions. No mow ever. I like it.
So have you ever thought about putting native prairie grasses around your property? Is that something you can do?
I've looked into it.
Yeah.
It's a tough sell with people who like their outdoorsy garden stuff, like my wife and Kylie.
Yeah.
And we'd lose our dogs in the grass, which would be another problem.
And it would bring the locusts to your screens.
Probably.
So, Alex, thanks for that. There are a number of these electric riders. I looked at Cub Cadet's more conventional lawn tractor setup that they came out with a couple years ago. It looks exactly like the gas version, except they put blue trim on it, which is pretty eye-popping. But it's pretty spendy, too.
What'd you pay for your mower, Patrick?
It was like $900 with 4 batteries, which struck me as expensive, but I get to use the batteries in my other Makita tools, which is kind of great. So if you think about it, I bought a $400 mower and $400 worth of batteries for my other tools. So that's how I'm thinking about it. It makes me feel better. This comes from Steve, our first question. Hey, FHB gang, thanks to all you do for the building industry. I discovered your podcast about 2 years ago and was immediately hooked. I worked as a trim carpenter for the past 7 years, and while initially was just interested in what there was about carpentry, the building science side of things has genuinely intrigued me. I first have some feedback regarding the recent Pro Talk with Keith Bowling about efficiency efforts for New York homeowners. I live in a 1970s one-story ranch in New Jersey, and last year had my state's similar program, New Jersey Clean Energy, perform work on my house. After finding out about the program and filling out a questionnaire, they sent out an assessor to look over my house and see if it was a good candidate for simple upgrades. They were able to send a crew to seal my vented crawl space and place a vapor barrier, as well as spray foam my attic penetrations and blow a few inches of cellulose over the existing fiberglass. I'm pretty sure it's made a difference, but our electric bills are inconclusive. One problem I found from their work has reared its head, however. My attic access is that basic folding wood aluminum ladder on springs with a sheet of Luan underneath. The crew that came out installed over it an aluminum foil bubble wrap zippered enclosure thing, which has had the unintended side effect of this past winter being a condensing surface for the air leaking up to it. My wooden attic ladder is now covered in mold. I'll be replacing it with one of the gasketed and insulated ones soon enough, but I can't help but be worried for people that don't have an awareness of what to do with problems like these. Wanted to know your thoughts on the matter. Thanks again, Steve. This is a great question,
It's
Steve.
such a great question. How do you answer it? I can't figure out how to answer it.
Where is all that moisture coming from in Steve's house? Does he have like a sauna right underneath this ladder?
Maybe he keeps it really warm.
Seems like a lot of moisture to cause mold to develop that quickly on a wooden folding ladder.
So, okay, here we go, though. So this weatherization entity came in and tightened up his house. So now the only place where it's really leaking is this ladder. And, so if you plug all the other holes, all that much more is focused on the ladder because of the stack effect, right? And, the insulation on the little tent thing is not enough to be above the dew point. So, boom, we got a humidifier.
Mm-hmm. I actually went to a green expo in my town recently, a couple weekends ago, and came across a company that is like a subcontractor to sort of like set up this whole thing, which he did, which is to have somebody come and do diagnostics on your house and then do some simple weatherization if you qualify. And so I keep coming back to his point is if you don't know what to look for in terms of once they start tightening up your house, what do you do? Like, you're going to wind up with more problems than you started with, right? Or
well, you hope that the assessor is smart enough not to do that, but I'm sure it's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
Patrick, have you ever seen this aluminum foil zippered bubble wrap thing before?
I've seen versions of this, Ian. I don't know if I've seen the exact version that Steve is talking about.
I've only ever built and seen ones made out of like foam board. And some of them can get pretty big and they look like, the top of a pharaoh's sarcophagus over your ladder.
Ceiling? Where does it get installed?
On the floor of the attic.
Okay.
And then the ladder folds up into the cavity created by it.
Into it, and then you kind of go up and lift it off and set it to the side. But I've seen ones that are, 4 inches thick all the way around and taped and spray foam joints and everything.
And it has to be sufficiently heavy to make some kind of air seal on the bottom edge, and it needs some kind of mating surface similarly on the trusses, cords, or the floor joists, or ceiling joists, I guess they'd be.
If it's sufficiently heavy, is it hard to open it up?
Yes.
It's not a great design, is it?
Well,
All
I
around.
mean, it's a problem.
Yeah.
The solution is a good staircase that's gasketed and has some kind of latch on it to hold it shut, and some insulation to get it above the dew point. I don't know. I don't think there's a good solution. I think the foam box is the best one, but it's a big, bulky, potentially heavy thing.
I think to Steve's point, with people being unaware of unintended consequences, there should be some kind of follow-up mechanism for the assessor to come back and see what their work's actually done to your house, right? That would complete the scientific method circle on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've often wondered if, folks have this work done who are less savvy about it, and they're sleeping with their window open at night because they like fresh air, or the bedroom to be colder, or whatever reason, and there goes all the benefit of tightening up the house.
So if you have somebody who really knows what they're doing, they're also educating the homeowner around what these improvements mean in terms of how you operate in your house.
Yeah, so
you're not leaving
human
the window
behavior
open.
is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the point of having a tight, well-insulated house, we're going through this shoulder season temperature time where we don't know what heat setting to have in our basement where our bedrooms are. So it's like last night it was 65 in the room, and my wife wanted to crank up the heat, and it's like, well, no, it's just, let's go to bed. It's not that big of a deal. It's 65 in here.
We can't have any heat.
Crank it up to 72 before we go to bed.
Right.
Your point is that it's not going to respond quick enough anyway,
It's not
right?
going to respond quick enough. And, I realized that the upstairs, because it was sunny out and it was, 68 degrees yesterday, the upstairs was at like 72 and we hadn't opened any windows. So then coming down to the 65-degree basement made it feel even colder to you when you walked in the room.
Shoulder seasons are tricky.
Yeah, and we're finding now that a lot of high-performance homes need, supplemental dehumidification because of there's no climate control for much of the season because it's not needed, but humidity control is some way. Is you have an ERV or an HRV?
I have an HRV, but I think I need to turn it up, and that would be part of my issue. Is it's still, I think, on the lower winter setting that I have for it, so I should really take a look at bumping it back up to so it's pulling more air out of here.
You're a scientific-minded individual. Are you tracking all your degree days and response with your climate control for your house?
Yep. Yeah, actually,
I was joking.
No, I know you were joking, but I am, because I'm really interested. I'm going to write something for Jess for the Fine Homebuilding house thing too about
tracking your energy use.
Yeah, tracking the energy use for the winter, and then I've been doing a lot of stuff with trying to size our solar array correctly to try and get that this year while the tax credit is still 26%. So yeah, I'm all over the what is it costing us to heat and cool the space. And
do you think Brian Pontilillo has plans to do that too with the house he's building? And it seems like if you build a house, you're very curious about sort of that same thing, the follow-up of how your work is, performing. Yeah. And did you have sensors in your wall assemblies? Did you do that?
I didn't, and I wish that I would have done more research on it. Wagner moisture meters make some really cheap, easy Bluetooth ones now that I'm actually half tempted to
drill a hole and stick it in there. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I'm really close to doing that. And
just do it behind a picture, and no one's going to know the difference.
Yeah.
And it's a good opportunity to tape drywall, right?
And repaint.
Always looking for those opportunities.
Yeah, we have. That's a good point though, because we have a couple of big, poster kind of large format things. I should just take one of those off the wall and drill a big hole. And
definitely.
Yeah, and then put some packing tape back on it for the air seal and get on with your life.
Yeah, I like it. I won't even tape the drywall. I'll just put some zip tape over it.
That would be how I would do
Sarah
it.
something to yell at me for if she ever moves the picture.
She's going to want to
It's
move
like,
the picture. And what the hell?
What happened here?
This comes from Adam. Dear Fine Home Building, my wife and I recently purchased a 1901 Cape Cod in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I have lofty goals of improving the house's energy efficiency. The walls have been dense packed by a previous owner, and a thermal camera shows it's been well done. I believe the next largest improvement to be had will be the air sealing and insulating the rim joists, insulating the upstairs bedroom slanted ceiling / attic, and installing exterior storm windows. The attic currently is poorly ventilated due to its shape and the minuscule size of the soffit vents. So my inclination has been to follow the article linked below, Don't Be Dense, which is on buildingscience.com, and create an unvented roof assembly with foam. However, I came across another article on GBA that seems to very closely match my home situation. And if I can safely dense pack my sloped ceilings and blow in insulation in the attic, I am all for the lower carbon approach. Let me know what you think. He says, I'd love to get the insulation and storm windows done before next winter, then track a full winter's worth of energy use to right-size my HVAC system, replacing the furnace with a heat pump. I'm just holding my breath that my 1998 Goodman dependable 92 furnace can hold out for one more year for my data collection. This brings me to my final question. How are most people going about replacing furnaces with heat pumps? My current system has 3 tons of air conditioning paired with 100,000 BTUs of furnace. My current calculations show that with zero insulation, my heating load should be approximately 90,000 BTUs. With the walls insulated, my load drops to 60,000, and with the roof and walls insulated, the load falls closer to 32,000 BTUs. If my furnace goes out before I can get the roof insulated, I would need at least a 5-ton heat pump to heat the house, but my AC would be oversized. This is assuming I'm avoiding the use of my supplemental electric heating coil, which is my preference. As much as I try to trust my calcs, if I am able to collect a year's worth of weather and usage data before swapping out to a heat pump, I would feel far more comfortable making the switch without a safety factor in my calculations. I love the podcast. Thanks for all you do and for your help and inspiration. Best, Adam. Okay, so Adam is worried his furnace is going to fail before he can data log how much actual heating load he has. What do we do?
Focus on the insulation and pray your furnace survives a year.
That's my total response. You're nodding too, Kiley. Are we all in agreement on this, Jeff?
Yep.
That seems to make sense.
Oh my goodness, this never happens.
I also would like to point him to a really robust series that John Herod just put together about replacing a furnace with a heat pump. It's six really dense posts long, and I think what's our reader's name? Or excuse
Adam.
me, listener Adam. I think you should check this out. I'll send an initial link, and then it will link you to the entire series. But it's so comprehensive. I think for somebody really interested in doing this is a good resource to have.
And Adam, I have a fallback solution in case your furnace doesn't last, is get the smaller one that your heating load for your improved house calls for, and then electric resistance heaters are cheap. You know, if you have to run them for a season to on the coldest days in certain parts of the house, who cares, right? You're talking an expenditure of maybe a couple $300 for the entire winter to just get by, and then you have the right size system when your house is improved.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more, and I think that he won't have an issue dense packing those walls. I looked through all the photos of his house or his ceiling in those rooms. I've done that before on similar projects in the Northeast, and then I would just say that when he does what would be the ceiling of that bedroom, the floor of the attic, look into how you're going to air seal that plane, because you're going to want to air seal it somehow prior to doing your just blown in. If you just blow in over that, what is the ceiling of that bedroom and the floor of the attic, you're still going to get air loss through there, which is going to make the the insulation less effective.
What do you think about folks who are going to say, you're not supposed to put a fibrous insulation without a vent cavity, Ian?
Without venting the attic?
Yeah.
I think you would do that at that point. You'd add some type of ridge venting or
for the flat ceiling.
For the flat ceiling?
Well, I'm guessing he has part of he says slope / ceiling, ceiling/attic. So I'm guessing he's got a flat
cake
section. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a flat ceiling that then it follows the roof line down to a knee wall. I would think you would dense pack that section that's sloped. Yeah.
And loose fill above
on
the flat.
Fill above, but make sure that you air seal that
transition.
Ceiling, the flat ceiling of that room. And we've done that in the past with Gutex or foam board and spray foaming it to the perimeter of the attic. You can also use a membrane if you just want to blow it in over some attic floorboards or something like that. Just making sure that you do tape it off as best you can, and then add probably a ridge vent to the house. One of the shots in the Zillow that he sent us had a house next to him that had a bunch of vents that had been added in. Looked like when they did the roof, they weren't ridge vents, they were just regular roof vents.
Like the mushroom shaped things, right?
Is it complicated to add a roof vent to an existing house? Seems like it would be.
No. It's very uncomfortable sitting on the ridge while you do it, I can tell you. Your thighs start burning from
I can't picture that. I can't picture that process. I can't picture what that entails.
It takes a little bit of time to remove the ridge shingles and then to cut yourself a space back. But you would just put some kind of shingle over vent product on there. There's several different ones you could use.
It's really the good time to use your most beat up circular saw blade because you're going to be cutting through shingles and nails and all kinds of fun stuff up there, and it's kind of exhausting.
Is there any risk of structural, the structural integrity of the roof? Is it possibly you're going to compromise it by adding that, cutting into it like that to add the vent?
It's hard to say never, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there are scenarios where rafters are poorly connected to the ridge and that sheathing layer is helping keep them there. But I mean, the geometry of the roof is such, there's always a seam at the ridge anyway, because it has to come up one side and go down the other. Right. So, I think that's
just
rare,
making that gap bigger.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like 2 inches is what I remember, right, Ian? Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Adam, I hope that was helpful. Keep us posted on what you do and your energy bills. It seems to be the in vogue thing is to track this stuff. Ian's going to send you his spreadsheet.
That spreadsheet is getting spread around like nobody's business.
Oh, no, this is his energy tracking spreadsheet. I'm sure he has a different one.
Got a lot of them, right?
Estimating.
Oh, that's right. That's what I'm thinking of.
This comes from Mark. Hey, podcast crew, I have a stone foundation house with a half basement poured slab. The other half is dirt. I can stand up in the poured slab area there's approximately a 7-foot clearance, but the dirt area is less forgiving with just about 3 or 4 feet of clearance. The house was built in the 1940s. It's a converted summer cottage and is literally on several large boulders. One of them is actually holding up the longest span of the floor with a holding up a joist / beam. This is all dirt in the dirt floor area. Welcome to Connecticut. I was thinking about how many New England basements I'd been in with this exact same scenario with a huge boulder because it was just too big to move. They just built around it or on it. He says, my basement has no visible water coming in. I'm happy with that. But I know I'm getting moisture seeping up through the dirt floor area. The dirt is damp to the touch. Do you have any suggestions on how to seal the dirt floor area, knowing I would need to somehow seal around the several boulders and unevenness of the dirt? I will need to do it with something that can take crawling over to get to my well pump pressure tank, whole house filter, and exposed plumbing and electric if needed. My other concern was radon getting in through the dirt area, but I have run several tests over the years and all continue to show up negative. Should I just let sleeping dogs lie? Thank you, Mark. Well, what another good question, and it's a common problem. Mm-hmm. So, Ian, what are you going to say?
I think you should do some kind of vapor barrier of some sort over the dirt, and whether he chooses to use a membrane or plastic or the high density foam board that you'd put under a concrete floor. Just make sure that it's taped and sealed to the perimeter, and then use plywood to go over the top of it to be able to get to where you need to go in the crawl space area.
He didn't mention if it's vented or unvented, which matters, right? So if it's vented, he needs to close those vents because that's moisture-laden air is coming in. So he wants. It sounds like it. It seems like he needs to encapsulate it, right? And the other thing he could do to protect it. I'm guessing it's not vented because it's it's got a section of full depth basement, which I'm presuming is where the heating plant is, right?
Yeah, but to Kiley's point, he could have some basement windows in there that are leaking, and might want to do something with those.
And if they were built at different times, maybe they were treated differently.
Well, we certainly know
we don't know if they communicate with each other.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Kiley. And we definitely can assume that it's there's some degree of air leakage around the band joist area and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I totally think you should cover the soil though because of the incredible vapor drive. And
you should.
Yep.
I think you can tape to the boulders or use acoustic sealant, which sticks to anything. Just make sure it's not a place where you have to go through to get to your mechanicals, because if you get it on you, it never comes off.
Yep.
Shouldn't he grade he was concerned also not just about the boulders, but the uneven surface. Shouldn't you grade the dirt floor before you encapsulate?
Absolutely. Yep. Because at a minimum, you're going to have to be crawling around this thing for hours doing this work. Mm-hmm. And I did a great feature with Jeff Tooley for Fine Homebuilding, and I'll link that on the podcast page, that talks about a project very similar like this in North Carolina. There were no boulders, but it had all the same problems with a dirt crawl space floor, sealing the vents that were part of the original crawl space, and providing combustion air for the appliances, because once you start tightening up the basement, you have to start thinking about that. So,
you could also put a rat slab on the top of that, right?
Sure.
Which is like how thick are those usually? Like 2 inches or something? And it just protects the vapor barrier?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would...
That's the point of it, right?
And it keeps out rodents, and bugs and stuff. So it has some advantages for sure. It's going to be a lot of work to place and finish a concrete slab in this space with boulders that's only 4 to 5 feet tall, 3 to 4 feet tall, right?
Be a great opportunity to rent a stand mixer and take it down in your basement and then hump 80-pound bags of concrete down.
That sounds fun.
I'm going to say that if the soil floor has been fine for decades, the vapor barrier floor is going to be way better, and it's going to be somewhat comfortable to work on. When I did this piece with Jeff Tooley, it was horrible at first, but as soon as they started spreading that plastic around, it was way better to work in there and way less dusty and messy.
Martin makes the point, too, that you could also put down a sacrificial vapor barrier on top of the one that you're trying to protect.
Yeah. So what Jeff does is puts out carpet runner, as on the walking paths, to the water filter, for example. You know what I mean? To keep them from getting damaged by people's boots and stepping on rocks and stuff.
Do you know what Ben Bogey does? Or
what?
At least he talks about it a lot. He throws down plywood, and then he gets his crew on skateboards to maneuver around down there. So you can sit, essentially, or be on your knees and roll around. It's pretty smart. That's
totally smart. I mean, that might be what helps your helper, your laborer, make it through the day versus the last 2 hours of being, totally worthless, right?
for a step-by-step on how to do this, Martin has written the book. So I will also share that link. It's literally do this, do that, do this.
I wish we could see Mark's boulders because I think that's just kind of cool. I'd be tempted to make that living space and leave them exposed. What's up?
I was just thinking, you said tape the vapor barrier to the boulders, right? Tape.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or acoustic sealant.
I think if you were going to use like a foam board product, then you would spray foam it to the boulder.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
But you may not need the insulation down there.
Right.
Jeff, you got any thoughts on this?
Nothing that hasn't been touched on. I mean, I think a couple of layers of plastic.
Yeah. Would help
I
a
love
lot.
how he just said it in a single sentence. Yeah. Layers of plastic.
This comes from Jeff in New Hampshire. Hi, FHB folks. I'll try to keep it short. I bought a 1,200 square foot house that I'd like to heat and cool with 2 mini splits. This has worked well for my current home, and it would mean I could eliminate the chimney and radiators for modernizing the floor plan. Here are my 2 concerns: the basement and the bathrooms. Does there need to be a heat source in the basement to prevent frozen pipes? The basement is used for laundry, storage, and utilities, and there's an electric water heater down there. Being cool down there in the winter is not an issue. It stays in the 50 degree range. Also, there are 2 bathrooms on the second and third floor. Would it be dumb to put electric baseboard heaters in the basement and 2 bathrooms? Does that negate the energy savings from the heat pumps? It's currently an oil-burning system that was ruined by a pipe burst flood. Are there safe direct vent oil burners? Should I put in a propane heater in the basement as backup? I have a few friends that are pro mini split, but we are running into the same issue with comfort from room to room, and a 5-head system seems overkill for 2 floors, 2 bathrooms, and the basement. What do you think? Thank you as always for getting into the weeds about talking about the realities of home renovation that are not straightforward. Yeah. Jeff, this is another great question. What's Jeff going to do? He's worried that his 2 heads are going to lead to temperature differences in these rooms that don't have them, and I think that's a legitimate concern.
So I looked up a couple of the electric radiant heat panel options that I've seen used, and one that I could find stats on had from Warmly Yours. It was a 500 watt model for approximately a 71 square foot room, which would be your
bath,
about your bathroom size there. And I did the math on what that would cost to run. And it comes out to about 84 cents a day if you were to run that for 8 hours. And you could put it on a timer and get even less electric usage out of it. And I would leverage those. And I based that on New Hampshire's electric rate of 21 cents a kilowatt hour.
So awesome.
I was ready to challenge you on whose electric rate you use, but I didn't need to.
I use New Hampshire's. He said he's from New Hampshire.
That's super smart. I was thinking about the I think it's Warmly Yours, or there's another one, Temp Zone. They have those electric radiant mats that you can install. Fernando just did an article on those, so that was what I was thinking. But the same idea. Do you think you'd need that in the
issue 308 coming up? Doug Horgan has a great piece on how not to mess that up, because there's a number of ways to get that wrong, and all are expensive and invasive to fix. So, I think that electric resistance is the perfect solution, right? In New Hampshire, you could get really, really freaking dangerously cold in the bathroom if you don't have any heat in there. Right.
What about the basement, though? It sounds like it's in the thermal envelope, right?
I'm less sure about the basement. I don't know.
You made a point. Like originally, when I read his question, I was thinking, well, if it stays in the 50 degree range, then it's probably within the thermal envelope, and that's not an issue for bursting pipes or freezing pipes. So,
except in really cold snaps, you do have weird things happen with air leaks owing to increased stack effect.
Right.
And the pipe being close to a good air leak will freeze, you know, even if this ambient temperature is, you would assume warm enough to prevent the pipe from freezing, but it can.
Huh.
You know,
do you have anything on his direct vent oil burners?
Nope.
Like, why would you replace an oil burner with another oil burner? So,
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
No.
I wouldn't.
Right.
I wouldn't, because it's a really expensive heating plant that has a really expensive heating fuel. You know.
So what about his idea about electric baseboards for back? He didn't say for backup, but that would be backup, right?
I love the comfort of my electric resistance baseboard heat that is currently like right in front of me. And in the morning when I keep the temperature 55, 60 degrees in here, but I turn it up to 65 and it just bakes me in convective warm air.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the efficiency of a lot of these electric heating appliances like the radiant heat panels has just improved so dramatically that they don't take that much energy and they don't cost that much to heat a space with.
And positioned correctly, they're heating you, not wasting heat, heating up the rest of the space. You can use them when you're using the space. They don't have to be on all the time. Like Ian said, it could be on a low thermostat or a timer, you know, or a setback thermostat that bumps it up when you want to, you know, shower at the same time every day.
Yeah, for a 1,200 square foot house with
that's the thing. It's so
some
small.
probably small rooms, I would think you could use these creatively throughout the house to offset using the mini splits.
Yeah.
Could also look at different mini split options that aren't just your traditional head on the wall. You know, they have all the different cassette models and wall cassettes.
And this might be the
cassettes.
perfect solution for a ducted mini split, right? You could have a number of registers in different rooms and, you know, still have the efficiency of a, you know, single head.
He's absolutely right to think that 5 heads in a 1,200 square foot house is
ludicrous.
ridiculous. Right.
Yeah.
It's just way too many. And, you know, if you did that at all affordably with, you know, 2-3 outdoor units, the like costs are crazy. And if you try and skimp and do 1 or 2, the efficiency takes a severe hit. So.
Yeah, this is another case too where, you know, you had, I think it was Chad Gillespie on from Mitsubishi. You know, those guys are a resource. You can reach out to them for help to design systems for not straightforward homes like a 1,200 square foot house with a lot of different rooms in it. And he's talking about eliminating chimneys and radiators and opening up the space. So it might be worth talking to somebody about, you know, the same problem an earlier letter writer had, where you have the house that you're working toward in the future. So how do you change to a system that works for that future house?
You need some kind of bridge to get there.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I bet that comes up for people all the time. As you're making improvements and you're trying to spec future systems, there's kind of a strange time frame in there where you're not going to have the right thing.
Yeah, especially those of us in, you know, zones 6, 7, maybe even certain parts of 5.
You know, one thing that gives me a little concern, and, you know, maybe it's not valid because Jeff needs electricity to run his oil-fired heating appliance anyway, right? But now we're talking about heating exclusively with mini splits and electric resistance. Like, you know, it seems conceivable that, you know, a power interruption, you could have burst pipes or be very uncomfortable. You know, maybe a propane unit heater, like what people often call a monitor heater, which is just like a central box that heats the house through convection. There's no fan. It will run without electricity. Might make sense in a place like New Hampshire, where, you know, temperatures are super cold. Maybe for you too, Ian, but your house is so resilient, I think that would be less of a worry. Do you worry about that?
No, because we have a whole house generator.
That's the other way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you had to use it?
No, but it kicks on every Tuesday for like 45 minutes to exercise itself and then shuts off.
It's
but
propane fueled?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Even so, the amount of propane that we've used over this winter is really impressive. I haven't gotten a chance to calculate it yet, but we're still working on the tank fill up that we got on New Year's Day.
And how
I'm
big
so
is an
glad that
underground propane cylinder?
So we have a 500 gallon one, but they only fill it to 80%. So, and I think I checked it last weekend, and there was still 35% of the tank left.
What does a gallon of propane cost now? I bet it is crazy expensive.
Yeah.
When we got it filled up, we were still paying $1.25, which was on a long-term contract. So.
Well, I would stockpile as much of that as you possibly could.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably like $7 a gallon now or something ridiculous like that. But yeah,
I drove. Oh, go ahead, Kiley.
I'm just wondering about how you said every Tuesday it runs for 45 minutes. First, I'm so glad that my neighbors don't do that. But also, is that considered best practice?
Yeah, it's set up from the manufacturer to do that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't work when they sit too long.
Right.
You know?
No.
Most people don't do that, though, I would gather, because I know there are a number of them in my neighborhood, and I don't hear them going off regularly.
Well, so Ian has, a standby generator. It's permanently installed, and I think most of those are on an exercise cycle. I don't know if they all do it weekly, but
Gotcha.
yeah, they're made to start up and run for a period of time every so often.
Yeah, we can make it for any day or any time we want. I think Tuesday was what it was set at, and then I just moved it to, I think, like an hour before we get home from work. So it goes from like 3 to 3:45 or something.
You would find this disturbing, Kiley, to hear this
well,
machinery.
they're loud, right? Typically. Is it loud?
Yeah, it's just a hum inside the house. I would imagine if I went outside, it would be pretty loud.
Exactly.
So to answer your question, Kiley, most people probably don't exercise their portable generators as often as they should, and I am among them. I can't remember the last time I started mine up because it's a huge pain in the butt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I keep it unfueled, right? Because I don't want the gas in my workshop, my office, my recording studio, and so then I got to run it until the gas is all out of it, and then let it sit outside until it's fully evaporated what remains, and it's a hassle. You want to buy a generator, Kiley?
I was thinking, what do I do when the electricity goes out and the water, you stop, no water, no electricity. And I realized that's only happened to me in the summertime. So I just get ice from a store, and use a cooler and try to save my food and deal with it and use the bathroom at the office, whatever.
Right.
But it's different when you're talking about it happening in the middle of, cold winter,
right.
Freezing temperatures. That's a whole different ball of wax. So I don't know what I'll do. Go to your house, I guess.
You're welcome. Although, if you have lost power, there's a good chance we'll have lost power
right,
too.
That's
yeah.
true. You're pretty close by. Yeah, that's
We'll
true.
go see Jeff. He's got room for all of us.
That's true.
Well, I want to remind everyone that the show was made much better by your questions, suggestions, threats, whatever. We love hearing from you.
Pictures of giant boulders that your house is built around.
That would be fun to see.
With all sincerity, it really does make the show better. So thanks for that. And please continue to write in. And if you haven't ever done so, no question is dumb. They're all good. We
Only
appreciate
the
it.
answers.
Only the answers.
That's right.
Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks to Ian, Kiley, and Jeff for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your questions, comments, and suggestions to FHB Podcast at taunton.com. And please, please, please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive. Do some air sealing.